encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network. Hello and welcome to Preachers in Training. This is the podcast on which we discuss all things preaching and ministry. I'm Robert Hatfield, coming to you once again from the Lads to Leaders Nashville Convention. And we're happy to be here, and I'm happy to be sitting down beside Logan Richardson, who serves as one of the ministers at the Church of Christ at Gold Hill Road, where I had the distinct honor of preaching for a little while. How you doing, Logan? Welcome, man.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well. What's your official title? Are you youth minister, associate youth? What are you?
Associate minister.
Okay,
so, yeah.
Associate minister, which means you do everything.
Yeah, a little bit of that. In South Carolina, it means mostly youth.
That's
how that works.
That's
but
true.
It's good. It's been. We've been there almost 2 years in June.
Fun.
And so, it's been a really good time. As well as I do, that's a good group of people.
Fantastic
we love them a lot.
Congregation. Yep. And I heard that y'all have like 100 people here at Lads this year.
We literally do. We
Isn't
have
that so
just
cool?
over 100. We have a couple families this is awesome.
Yeah.
Had their grandparents come and even a friend's family come or something.
Isn't that neat? One of the things I love about the way Gold Hill does Lads is you'll have people who come and they don't have kids or grandkids in the program. Mm-hmm. They just want to support the kids of the congregation. It's just a great thing.
Yep, it is super cool.
Really cool. We're talking today about discipling teens in a digital age, and in as much as you work primarily with young people, I thought maybe we could talk about that. Some people, if they're watching the video, they're thinking, "This guy, he's not very old himself."
He is a teen. Actually.
He is a teen. No, but you're not a teen.
No.
You've got lovely Parker, who's just off camera, and another kiddo on the way, which is pretty awesome. But we were talking before we hit the big red record button a minute ago that you can relate to some of the struggles of trying to disciple teens in a digital age. You want to share a little bit about that background or however you want to do that? I mean, we were talking about, you grew up with a phone in your pocket, right? I didn't.
Yeah.
I had a flip phone, but that didn't,
What's that?
I know, exactly.
No, just kidding. What I think is interesting about this conversation, and for me, my wife, Ashley, we're both the same age. She's older than me. I don't like to admit that. But,
oh, wow. Okay.
But we're 23, and I was born in 2001. And so, I feel like that's maybe an interesting perspective for this, because you got a lot of different people have different opinions on either the way phones work. I've got a computer, right here in front of me, and the way we interact with technology is different, and the way that you view it is different based on your generation.
Okay.
But I find it interesting that, for me, being born in 2001, I remember I think I was 10 years old when I bought my first, and I bought it with my grass, my lawn mowing money. I bought it was an iPod 4th generation touch,
Yeah.
I had Clash
What's
of Clans
that?
on
Just
there. It was
kidding.
crazy.
See, I can turn it back on you. All right. My kids look at I've got an old iPod, and they're like, I like that phone. And I said, you know what? It couldn't make phone calls. And they were like, what?
Well, what's the point? What's the point?
Anyway, I digress.
Buttons? Yeah.
I know. Okay, so you bought with lawnmower money.
Yep.
It
was like $100, $110 or something. I bought mine, and I was 10 or 11 years old. And
what'd you do on
screen.
It? Games?
Games. It was an iPod, so I couldn't, call on it or anything. But
you could do internet and stuff.
Could, yeah. And so, but that was interesting, And I would say my parents, honestly, in the way that we interacted with technology and stuff, they were pretty strict comparatively, you know. But just the idea of having phone or a technology of some kind that young.
Did you have a messaging app?
I did. I don't think I did that young.
Okay.
But soon after, I had a messaging app that it was.
It's virtually the same
number.
As a phone.
Yeah.
Same idea. Once you get to that point. Yeah.
Yeah. Just had to have Wi-Fi for it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that exposure that young, I guess, gives me an interesting perspective, which everybody younger than me also has. But also, I'm now an adult, and so I'm this weird middle between. I'm an adult and one of maybe the first sets of parents. Now I have 2 kids, one on the way, or I have 1 kid, one on the way. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so just an interesting perspective, I guess, is all. And obviously I care. I've got my kids are going to grow up in an even more digital age.
Yes.
Even more digitally native than I am.
Yes.
And so I got to think about what's that going to mean for them, and what can I learn having been that first generation of guinea pigs
that
had to go through navigating that when all of our parents didn't quite know what was possible. I didn't know it was possible. I didn't
Yeah.
know what trouble I was getting into.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's why I care. Obviously.
Guinea pigs is a good way to describe that because I mean we're only beginning to learn first from the millennials and now through some of you older. You're Gen Z, right? We
Yeah, Gen Z.
consider you
Yeah.
guys Gen Z.
Yeah.
So some of you older Gen Zers, I mean, we're just now beginning to really understand the toll that this may have taken. And I don't want to paint it like it's just a all terrible,
Yeah,
right?
no.
It's not. But the generational impacts of being connected like that
Right.
on virtually all the time or from a young age.
Right.
And as you say, you and your wife, y'all are thinking about, you got little Parker over there, and what do you want her digital involvement to be,
Right.
and at what age does that begin? And then also from a youth group perspective, you're trying to figure out, okay, how do we help to disciple these young people,
Right.
and help them to think biblically about all this.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
This is the nature of your challenge, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
Okay.
lot.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the good news. Maybe that's why a lot of us youth ministers and associate ministers are a lot younger, because we've got kids. We're actively doing it still and stuff. So, but that's also the thing.
thing.
You are too. I mean, so
Yeah.
you've got 3. So
Yeah, no, we got 2 kids.
2 kids.
2 kids, 8 and 5.
8.
And we're trying to do the same thing. I mean, what do you do?
Sorry, I almost made like a big announcement on accident for you.
No, and I mean, you're a prophet. You may be. I don't know. That's okay. Emily, are you listening to
Yeah,
this?
no,
Or
no,
do
no.
we- Okay, so anyway, yeah, I mean, trying to figure this out. I mean, we're not, and some parents are even like, do I want my kid's face on social media?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, there's stuff like this that like we think, well, this could possibly end bad, but we don't know
The
yet.
hilarious one to me and Ashley is always, well, I did it and I turned out okay.
No.
I'm like, did you?
Debatable.
Yeah,
Debatable.
Yeah, debatable. Let's come on. You don't want to put yourself in that position.
I love it.
But that is how a lot of people act about it.
Yeah.
Even something like putting your face on social media. It's
Right,
like
right.
I'm not typically the one to do that.
Yes.
To be that worried about that yet.
Well,
I
you
don't-
guys
I
are
don't know.
photographers. I
We
mean,
are,
you got
yeah.
the best kid pictures.
How else are we
ever.
going to argue or advertise?
Yeah.
I mean, argue.
Yeah. Advertise.
Advertise.
Argue. Okay.
Argue.
Yeah.
Argue
Yeah.
our case for being
Yeah,
photographers.
that's right.
But
Well, and you've got family all over the place, and y'all don't live near your family members.
right, yeah.
And that's the way we were. And so Instagram became the shared photo album. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
just the way we did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, people will be like, well, we grew up doing it this way, and we
Yeah.
it turned out fine, kind of thing. And,
Right.
But that's difficult, because you got to think about, is that truly what is,
Yeah.
is that the best way to think about it? Or
Right.
can we honestly learn from what's happened and what we're going to do, and think ahead to the future, knowing there's going to be changes and knowing it's going to be difficult?
That's good.
Because that's
Okay.
that's not to say that like my generation or even my parents' generation or people older, born in the 90s
Right.
generation grew up, had any of their own issues. They obviously did. They're just different. And
Yeah.
so we gotta,
Oh, sure.
we got to anticipate them
Yeah.
rather than just try to be reactionary.
Yeah.
Because, once somebody's addicted to their phone or already has a problem with pornography or already
Yes.
has anxiety from all this stuff, it's hard to backtrack on that.
Good
You
point.
can't just retract it.
Yeah. It's like you can't put the toothpaste back into the tube.
Yep. You ever tried that?
No, I never have, but I
Man.
don't think it. I
I
hear
wouldn't
it's a
try.
good youth group exercise to
Oh.
teach these very lessons.
I'm gonna write. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
Gotcha.
the farthest thing from a youth minister. Okay,
That's
I've
great.
been old my whole life. I'm in the book The Anxious Generation. Jonathan Haidt, who is a social psychologist, he's a professor in New York, and he talks about this very issue. He mentions that back in the day, like in the 90s, when the internet became a thing and we started hearing about stranger danger, and we were worried about, can we let our kids go outside and play
Right.
like they did back in the day?
Right.
Okay, and so the old idea of like your kids go out and you don't see them again until dinner time, and people started reacting to dangers of strangers coming into your neighborhood and kidnapping and things like that, and so from that, parents said, well, let's just bring them inside and put them on their computer. The computers were getting to be a new thing, and so we just
Right.
brought them inside and put them on the internet, and we didn't realize what the dangers were of doing that. In thinking that we were saving them from one thing, we actually put them in front of something, and we didn't really understand everything about that. And that's kind of what we're getting at now. We have a little better of an understanding of things that could happen. We understand that it's not all bad, so we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
And in an age where boy, you hate to bring it up, but like school shootings and stuff like that, you feel like your kids need to be connected somehow, even from school. If they can have a phone there. I know a lot of parents who are wrestling with this. Like, when do I give my kid a phone? For me, it was like when you turn 16 and you're driving on your own, then you need a phone just in case something bad happens.
Right.
But I think for a lot of people, 16 seems like a long time to wait. So I don't know. I mean, anyway.
Well, I think you bring up an interesting point about coming inside to escape the dangers of the world.
Yeah.
Like physically dangers of the world.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you come inside and don't realize that with technology and internet access, you do have the ability of the world to still permeate inside your home.
And influences far beyond what your neighborhood might offer.
Right. There's one thing to be said for physical danger, but there's another thing to be said for spiritual danger.
Yeah.
Right?
As a youth minister and as a Gen Z.
A Gen Z. Yeah.
As a Gen Z, I mean, what advice do you have? And maybe, I mean, this is a ministry show, it's in the parenting show, but like, how do we talk to people in our congregations, young people? I mean, how do we help them to see this without sounding like a stick in the mud, Because we want to do it in a way that is informative, but not like overcorrective.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of our young people, especially in youth group age, they're like, yeah, we already know all this stuff.
Right.
Maybe it's more like your parents need to know, like, what is Reddit? What's going? I mean, TikTok's been in the news a lot lately, and people I think are a little bit aware of that. But like, what advice do you have? I mean, do we need to talk about this more as a church?
Yeah, we definitely do. And it's funny, maybe you picked the wrong person because I'm still formulating this myself.
I know, but what are your thoughts? Because I mean, we're all feeling this through in the kind of in the dark together.
Well, I'd love to. So here, I've actually got plans to hopefully have a class, and I've seen other people do it different ways on that they've shared on Facebook and groups, ministry groups and stuff too.
Yeah.
So
we're learning from each other.
Exactly.
By the way, Facebook. So that's great.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's a good positive use of it, right? Well, one of the things that I've seen a lot of people do is let's just have a class for parents and call it Youth Ministry 101, which is funny because like for parents, right? Which is like a weird thing because, right? I'm the youth minister.
Yeah.
Or you've got a youth minister at your church. That's their job.
Yeah.
But that's the problem, right? We think that if we just send our kids these things, then they're going to be fine. The problem is, parents are ministering to their youth. That's the point. Is they're supposed to be doing that. So, I think what I would love to structure a class about this around. And maybe my brain works in a weird way. I don't know. Somebody have to tell me if this resonates with them or not. But
his email address is I'm just kidding.
I'm starting to work kind of like visually and like graphs kind of way.
Okay.
So what I want to do is I want to start working from the top down, and think with our kids. Okay, we have all these expectations and hopes and dreams for our kids one day. Let's hope they're going to be, a servant in the church, or they're going to be a leader in the church, and they're going to be maybe outgoing, or they're going to be able to do speech really well. We're here at Lads to Leaders. That's what a lot of parents want their kids, or we want them to be a great husband or father one day. Those are great, awesome, lofty goals.
Yeah.
The problem is we're just like winging our way through life and parenting and hoping that they just wind up that way.
Yeah.
Whereas we could be reverse engineering it and think, what do we want our kids to be? What biblically would a Christ-like grown adult look like that we all want to be? And how can we do things in the meantime as parents and as youth ministers, ministers all around, to work toward that at least, to make actual progress.
So begin with the end in mind.
What's the goal?
Yeah.
And through that, you think, okay, well, we want our kids to be able to have a good relationship with their wife one day. Okay, and that includes, sexually.
Yeah.
Well, okay, how can we actually go about making sure that our kids stay pure in that way? Well, we got to think about practical ways to actually do that now, rather than just saying, I think it'll be fine, they'll make it through.
Right.
And then, and really just, like you mentioned earlier, we're all doing this together and learning from each other and doing it at the same time. So how about we bounce ideas off each other?
Yeah.
And not every family is going to do it the exact same way, and not every family has to do it the exact same way.
Right.
It depends on your kid, depends on what technology you're even considering. But all of that to say, how about we talk about it in a class setting with Christians and parents and people that have the exact same goals, live in the same area, have kids the same age, or maybe you've got kids. You got some parents that just had kids that are seniors in high school.
Yes.
And then you've got some other parents that are parents of kids that are 3 years old.
Yeah.
And then how about we let them teach the younger parents too? Like, let's put our heads together. I think that's, to me, that would be the first next step.
That would be a very valuable Bible class. I mean, just get a bunch of parents in there of different age groups. You start by talking about, okay, here's sort of the problem, if you will.
Right.
Let's work together for a biblical solution.
And maybe that's very Gen Z of me to be like, hey, let's just sit around and talk about it. As opposed to,
There's value there, though.
There
is value.
But,
and
a lot of people prefer a Bible class
conversation.
that's obviously like a, lecture style. And I think that's maybe how
There's a place
parenting classes.
for that.
And but, I know that, again, like I said, Gen Z, maybe that's us. But I know I would benefit from that style of stuff myself. So.
That's right. As I'm thinking about your idea of reverse engineering this, beginning with the end in mind, I'm thinking, okay, that's going to necessitate that I familiarize myself with some of the ins and outs of how like social media works and like doom scrolling and the dopamine hit that comes from just constantly scrolling. I mean, things like that. So I may need to do a little research on that and realize that it might not be anything bad necessarily.
Right.
But, getting some social anxiety when my phone isn't near me.
Right.
Or an inability to just be still and quiet.
Yeah.
Those things can impact. I mean, even like, I'm not trying to make enemies, but like, sticking a screen in front of your kid at the dinner table. Right. I mean, I'm not saying that's always a bad thing, but I'm saying, how will we ever learn to be able to sit at the dinner table?
Right.
And those are hard things to do when you've got little kids, but they pay off, over the long haul. So.
And I would even add to all of that, not just socially and mentally, how do we just kind of choose the right things in this discussion, but also let's try to educate ourselves on the actual apps themselves. I think that's another big problem, I guess, is that, I hate to say this, your kid probably knows more. Not probably. Your kid knows more about the internet than you do.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and maybe not ours yet. They might not be old enough. But even
I don't know. They might.
But maybe.
Yeah.
That's the thing. We have to at least keep that in mind, because especially if your kids maybe are in public school or private school, they go to and they're around all these friends that you don't know what those families have as their values and their preferences.
Yeah.
And so they're teaching your kid things about the internet, whether it's hey, I got this new app. You should get it so we can talk.
Yeah.
Well, it might be a cool idea in principle, and your kid doesn't know any better, but then they just go a little bit further into it.
Yeah.
I know, like, my parents' rule was that we could have Facebook was the first one we could have.
Okay.
Which is funny because, like, that's the old person.
Yeah, it's the old people app.
Social media.
Yeah.
But I think that was
that's
for
probably
good reason.
why. Yeah.
And I've seen in my experience, that's probably the safest social media that I've seen.
Do you? Okay.
At least of the mainstream ones, Instagram.
Not to say
TikTok,
there aren't holes there, but I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And there's, but that's the thing. Let's evaluate and think about the potentials of all of them, because you got something like Reddit, okay? Like you mentioned a minute ago, somebody may not even have ever even heard of Reddit.
Yeah.
But there's kids that's their primary social media, and so if you don't know how that works and you don't know what's possible on those things, then it's going to make it really hard to parent your kid, or again, as a minister, it's hard to communicate with your kids that are on these apps if you don't know how they work.
And the days where you could say, I just don't understand that technology stuff.
Right.
I mean, I think those days you don't have the luxury of claiming ignorance about this stuff.
Right.
You're going to have to get in there and push some buttons and, mill around and try and figure out this kind of thing, right? I mean,
well, and let's be honest too. Speaking of comparing it to the physical danger of, we took in the generation that started up with technology, we took them inside, so they were out of the danger of. We put them behind doors, so that they would be safe.
Yeah.
Can we take a lesson from that also in this?
Right.
Can we make some stands and close some doors to things that are not worth exposing our kids to or letting?
Right.
As a father, as a husband, not as a minister, but as a father and a husband, my house is my responsibility.
Yes.
And to guard it spiritually, and that's what's important.
I love that. And to realize too that it's not always. It is about guarding us from what we will see, but also even guarding how long we see even good things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm on this kick this year for 2025. My word is kind of discipline. I don't always do the one word thing, but I mean, I'm kind of like
buzzword.
And I guess I'm not trying to be. I don't know that I'm overcorrecting.
I bet you have a vision board too, don't you?
Undisciplined. I don't have a vision board. I do have core values, but that's a different story.
That's good.
I nerd out about this stuff. But my phone is working my nerves, and it's not just because I get a lot of phone calls and texts. So that's true. That's part of ministry,
right?
But just like if I have a down moment, next thing I know, I'm scrolling, and I'm like, I've got to quit, and I do it in the name of good things, like it's good to be on Facebook to keep up with what's going on, and or like I'll get on Facebook to make a social media post for the church, and then 30 minutes later, I'm still there. The post is made. It's been shared several times. So that's just on my nerves, and I'm trying to correct that as best I can.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's good.
Well, even those good things, I'm doing that as well. Work with Bible Camp and posting on a Bible Camp Facebook page is a great idea, but I'm sitting there sometimes, way more than my personal page. I'm sitting there like, oh, do people like that?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, we do that.
Have
I
we
still do
shared
that.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we spreading the word? I mean, it may not be even for vanity. It may just be, are people receiving this?
Yeah.
Okay. Boy, I had something I was going to say, and now I forgot what it was.
Threw you off. That's my bad.
No. It's not you. It's me. I mean, this is just we've got to have these conversations. We need to familiarize ourselves with what it is that's going on. Parents need to be aware not just of the apps, but also of some of the settings and things that you can do.
Yeah.
Just do some Google searches. You can come up with that, or talk to people or encourage your congregation to have workshops like Chad Landman's digital parenting workshop, or Jason Helton from the Madison Church, Analog Faith in a Digital Babylon. He brings back, both of those guys bring out, and they're friends of the show, but they bring out great things that we need to consider that could help parents. And there are a lot of great blogs out there and things too that can help you to get in touch with some of that stuff.
And again, I say this humbly, hopefully, but let's also learn from others who have experienced it. And I think that's maybe my plea. Obviously, I want to listen to others who have gone through as well, but there's a generation that has gone through it. I had a post on Facebook where we kind of talked about this kind of stuff. Some people were talking back and forth on it, which was good because, like you said, we just need to talk about it.
Yes.
And I'm just saying, my observation was the majority of people taking the more conservative stance about, let's be careful. Yeah. Let's at least be aware of the challenges. The majority of those people saying that were in my generation. So you might think that it's, the younger the people are, the more they want to just be free and go with whatever they want to do technologically. That's not quite true, because the Christian friends that I have that are my age are all saying kind of the same thing that I was saying at the beginning, that there's a challenge here. We lived it, and we're just trying to help and warn.
Why do you think that is? Like what dangers are you guys maybe more aware of because you lived through that stuff?
Well, pornography addiction.
Okay.
Like, that's a huge one. I mean,
there you
major.
go.
It's probably number one. The other one I would say that I've noticed is also just ideological exposure that seems more subtle. Because again, you think about your kids are on these things and you think they're just obviously following their friends, and that's great, and those are the good uses of social media. And now, don't hear me, I'm not against free speech and that of course, but you got people on the internet with some wild ideas.
Right.
And the problem is, if there's unrestricted access for kids to get on and just do whatever they want and search whatever they want, they might be, without guidance, without proper biblical guidance, they might be getting into things that they don't know how to handle ideologically, philosophically, religiously. And so I've had friends really get pulled away by things because, let's be real here, if we're spending several hours a day in screen time on our phones or the computer or TV, whatever it is, that equates to more time than we're spending in spiritual upbuilding conversations.
Good point. Which
means, which one is going to influence the mind more?
Right.
And what would you expect of a teenager but to be influenced by that thing more? So I think that's just another thing to keep in mind. There's the possibility of maybe maybe you think you're teaching your kid well in Bible class,
Yes.
and maybe you have a family devo once a week or so. Those are great things, but the danger is that doesn't hold a candle to how much time they're spending learning about something else.
Yeah.
That they're being won over by.
Well, in the reality, I mean, this has always been the case, but maybe it's especially true today. I mean, Bible class, 2 hours a week is not sufficient to spiritually ground your
If
kid.
we get that.
Yeah, if we get that.
Right.
And for that matter, it's not enough to spiritually ground you as an adult
Nope.
either. I mean,
Absolutely
it's just not.
Well, and that's something that, I mean, actually talked a lot about, especially recently, is back to the conversation about, parents, we need to be able to talk about this.
Yeah,
well, we
yeah.
need to talk with our kids.
Yeah.
When something comes up,
Openness.
I feel like we'll complain about something that our kid did. Never talked about it with them, though.
Mm-hmm.
So when they do something that maybe is concerning or wrong,
Right.
maybe it's cliche, but let's make it a learning moment.
Good
And
point.
say, hey, even Parker's just sad or crying or upset about something kind of randomly. She'd be like, "Oh, mommy doesn't love me." Okay, well, calm down. Let's actually
hold on.
Let me make sure you don't ever think that.
Yeah,
she
correct.
does.
Yes.
Let's learn. Like she does. I promise you, she does.
Yeah.
And so just taking little times like that. If your kid talks about something they saw on the internet, let's be like, hey. Warn them of the danger. Tell them what to do when they encounter something
There
like
you
that.
go. Yeah, it's not just about making a bunch of rules and putting up a bunch of
Absolutely.
walls. It's
Absolutely.
explaining and then what do I do when? Because it's coming.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I mean, there will be exposure to something that you wish they weren't exposed to. And just being ready to deal with that.
And a lot of parents really think that the answer is to just, and maybe some ministers feel this way too, but a lot of people think the answer is just to let them figure it out.
Yeah.
And they got to do it at some point. They're going to go out in the world, and you can't keep them forever. But the problem with that is if you're not actively teaching along with that, then there's no value.
There's got to be some proactivity there. Yeah, I agree. And I love what you said about just the openness there and maybe even some explanation. I get it, as parents, sometimes we need to default to the because I said so thing. Maybe we don't have time in this moment to give you a full explanation. And maybe we don't necessarily owe it to you, but at the same time, for there to be an understanding, this is why there are these rules in place. Right. And especially as our young people get older. And boy, talking to some fellow parents in the congregation where I live, they're going to be exposed to this stuff early than you're ready for them to be exposed to it.
Yep, absolutely.
And so just to be aware of that, yeah.
I guess bringing this back around to ministry, like you said, ministry podcast, not parenting.
Yes. Yep.
One thing I love that was said at the Freed Hardeman lectureship, the youth minister workshop. I don't remember who was the speaker, but he said that how can we kind of measure our success in working with young people? And what they said was, it's not about numbers. Obviously, we know that.
Yeah.
It's not about any other thing you could kind of quantify. It's about, did we put all the opportunities we could in place in front of families and parents and kids in order to grow them spiritually and to set them up for success future. So it's not quantifiable, but did we provide opportunities? And I think this is one of those things that we got to start roping into that.
Yeah.
We put camp as an opportunity, obviously.
Yes.
Let's go to Mid-South or let's go to PBC or let's, those are great things. But what about the opportunity is let's equip parents
That's right.
to also start having these conversations, to take it seriously,
Yeah.
and to be able, because I think maybe the problem is a lot of parents don't know where to start. So maybe our job as ministers to equip them is to start talking about this with them so that they can then convey that to their kids.
That's good.
Because it's going to be better. They're in the home with their kids.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not my job twice a week, 3 times a week, to just try to drill this in.
Yeah.
It's about parents doing that on a daily basis when it actually comes up in life.
I've had some youth ministry friends who I think they're very thoughtful about these things, and they're like, yeah, but the majority of the way that I interact with my youth group is through a Facebook group or through like WhatsApp or something like that. Do you have thoughts on, and I know they have thoughtfully considered in light of that, like, am I enabling some of these kinds of things? Because this is the only way that I know to get in touch with my group. Do you have thoughts about that? I'm putting you totally on the spot on this, so y'all don't judge Logan for his answer. We have no script here.
Don't judge me for any of my answers, actually, please.
Right.
Let's
we
just disregard all of this.
and we don't judge. Okay.
That's a good point because I've considered that before. I
Yeah.
remember. Okay, so I had Facebook, when I was 14. That was when I got that.
Okay.
I wasn't allowed to have Snapchat. Then I got Snapchat in college.
Yeah.
Bad idea.
Okay.
Bad idea.
All right. You
I'll
heard
just
it
say
here. There it is.
Not really worth it. My parents had a good point.
Okay.
And I should have listened to them.
Oh.
They said just, while you live here. Anyway.
Yeah.
Going into internships
Uh-huh.
during my college years and then going into a ministry job, yeah, you've got kids that are on Snapchat.
Yeah.
Do you have Snapchat on your phone? They're going to ask you for your Snapchat.
Okay.
Is that a good idea?
Mm.
Let's be real here.
Mm-hmm.
And also, maybe a Snapchat group chat is their favorite way
Right.
to communicate with each other. But I like how you said that. Would we be enabling if we just open it up and make it so easily
Yeah.
accessible? Especially if that's a primary way, because you may have a family that decided that wasn't a good idea for them and
Yes,
their family.
right.
And then they feel on the outside and left
Yeah.
out.
They don't ever get any of the info.
I'm even struggling with that right now with Instagram. We have
Yeah.
an Instagram page for our youth group.
Uh-huh.
Some of our kids in the youth group run it. Shout out Savannah and Gabby.
Hey.
Now I got to make sure they watch this.
You'll bury it
I'm gonna
30
quiz them
minutes
later.
into it
Yes.
to see if they actually heard it.
Yeah, 2 times speed. That's what I do. But the problem is, there's ways to do group chats on Instagram. But one of the reasons I haven't started that is because I know we're going to have some kids on the outside, and that's not fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how?
And also,
we
you
use,
don't want to have to
Remind,
be posting things 3 different places either, so
Oh,
that
man.
everybody can
Yeah,
get
no.
to it. Yeah.
So I just post on Remind, which is just a
Okay.
text. So if everybody's got a phone, they text.
Yeah.
If not, try to do my best. Put it in the bulletin. We'll get it out in paper. We'll put
There
it on
you
a bulletin
go.
board.
The old
If anybody
bulletin.
reads it,
Yeah.
So we'll do what we
Okay.
can.
Yeah, it's good stuff. There's a lot to think about in these
Yeah.
discussions, and again, the blessings and the curses as we go along.
Yeah.
One thing that I just thought of that I was going to say earlier, and when my brain, went into lads mode, there are predators on like Instagram, and I don't know. A lot of us think, Instagram, it's pretty tame. We see what we see on there, but I mean, there are people who are actively coming at our young people, and I think there are things that maybe were emphasized to us, as we were growing up in the 80s and 90s. Not you, Logan, but some of us older people.
Before I was born.
The people who are on their way to the nursing homes now. We were impressed with stranger danger, but I'm talking to college students right now, and they weren't impressed with that stranger
Right.
danger message. And they're like, I get a message on Instagram, I reply to it. And I'm like,
Right.
that's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
You should not do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, we just need to be real about what's going on. And as
Yep.
ministers, we're going to kind of have to get out in front of that a little bit. Some of that we're going to be exposed to those dangers, hopefully not by real life, experience, but more like things that we hear about that people are doing. We may have to do a little research. And then, as you say, I love that, not just warn, but also equip our
Yeah.
families how to deal with this, how to get out in front of it with their kids, and just be there for them,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Definitely.
Good. Yeah. Anything else that was on your mind before we wrap this up? I'm putting you totally on the spot. I just want you to give an opportunity to, if there was something you really wanted to emphasize, that we make sure we emphasize it.
No, I mean, I think that's what we talked about already. Just to, I guess, summarize it is,
Yeah.
we gotta talk about it, and we
Good.
gotta actually, and that's obvious, it's cliche, but talk about it with the intention of doing something about it.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that everybody's method of handling it in their home or in their ministry or whatever is going to be the same.
We don't have to be dogmatic necessarily.
Right.
Yeah.
But you got to be willing if there's a need to do something about it.
Yeah.
That's parents, that's ministers, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think if we do that, then we're probably taking more strides than has been in the past, because we just didn't know in the past.
Yes.
But as we know, right, there's statistics, you can look it up. I didn't before this, but like you could look up Barna. I mean,
Right.
you can get
It's
scared
all
out
out
there.
Yeah, it's all out there.
Let's just be smart about it.
Yeah. I love, and I think this is a good thing to pick up if you haven't thought about this and you're in ministry. Maybe you're focused on your youth group because you're a youth minister, but to minister to their parents as well about things, I think is a really, really good idea.
Yep.
Because think about it, you know what your youth group needs, maybe.
Yep.
I'm not going to say you know them better than their parents do, but I'm just saying, like, you may be alerted to some things that aren't on the parents' radar, or maybe aren't as big of a deal to them as you think they are. Pressing of a need, maybe, is a better way to say that. And to alert them to that in some way. I mean, think about it. If you don't do that, there may not be anybody else
Right.
on the ministry staff. It just isn't on their radar like it is on yours, and so to help them out
and
with that.
I don't mean to say this as a tattletale
Yeah,
on your
okay.
kids whenever you see something.
Yes.
But I agree with you. One thing, that's getting more real is, right, if you're on Instagram, you can see what other people like on Instagram now.
Hey.
That used to be kind of hidden.
Yeah.
And what do you do if you see that some of your kids are liking
Oh,
questionable things?
yeah,
right,
yeah.
and it's on anything. You could
Right,
technically
right.
see that on any social media probably, but
Yeah.
it's become more hot of an issue, I guess, on Instagram recently.
Good point. Yep.
What do we do? Well, let's all check ourselves.
Yeah.
Let's all be careful, right?
Good.
But how can we, if we recognize something,
Yeah.
let's be willing to work through it, I guess.
Good point. Good point. Logan, we appreciate you.
Yeah.
Appreciate the good ministry that you're doing, man.
Thank
and
you.
we appreciate the church at Gold Hill Road. And that congregation has done a lot, has invested in me a lot. And then
Yep.
you guys actively support our work at the Light Network. And I really appreciate that as well.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to take an opportunity to say that because I don't always get an opportunity
Yeah,
to say that.
absolutely.
So any chance I have to brag on Gold Hill Road, I love to do that.
Yeah, me
'cause,
too.
It's such a forward-thinking congregation. And it's good in a good way.
Yeah.
Some people hear forward thinking, they're like, oh, red flags.
Yeah.
Calm down. We don't mean it like that. So it's
No.
good stuff. Thank you for carving out some time last
Appreciate it. Yeah.
weekend to sit down with us too.
Yeah,
I
thank
know
you.
there's
Surprised
just
you
some-
had time.
Oh, hey, I'm here. I'm here at this great booth. That Lance
It's a
Leaders
great
has
booth.
provided for us. So
Yeah, that's cool.
it's a good thing.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. We want to appreciate you for joining us for this edition of Preachers in Training and remind you we release a brand new episode every Thursday from The Light Network and from our podcast partners. Catch the video version on YouTube and you can see Logan's lovely, youthful face.
My Gen Z face.
Yeah, like and subscribe. Share with a friend if you feel the need to do so. Until next time, let's preach the word.